Review of Digital Rhetoric, Theory, Method, Practice by Douglas Iman. Reviewed by Ruth Lee. In Digital Rhetoric, Theory, Method, Practice 2015, Douglas Iman conceptualized digital rhetoric as an emerging field. Part of Iman's project was to define and locate digital rhetoric as a study and practice situated at the nexus of interdisciplinary fields such as digital literacy, visual rhetoric, new media, human-computer interaction, and critical code studies. A further aim was to position the endeavor at the intersections of theory, method, and practice, each of which comprises a chapter. Each strand interwove insights into the ways in which digital spaces complicate traditional conceptions of rhetoric. As a production of digital rhetoric, the book illustrates an interplay between content and format. For instance, reflecting the notion that hypertextuality invites intertextuality, the digital version of the text incorporates hyperlinks to each section of the book and to course syllabi, scholarly web texts, textual appropriation and remix projects, as well as collaborative websites on digital rhetoric that provide informative resources to scholars and practitioners of the field. In addition, the digital book invites interactivity through a social annotation tool, as readers who log in are able to highlight and annotate the text, as well as view other users' markups and comments. Published by the University of Michigan Press under the imprint Digital Culture Books, the book offers an essential contribution to digital rhetoric, not only by relating its past histories, mapping its present positionalities, and envisioning its future directions, but by articulating its larger significance as a field in its own right. Chapter 1, Defining and Locating Digital Rhetoric. Overview. In Chapter 1, Defining and Locating Digital Rhetoric, Iman created an opening for digital rhetoric for its emergence and existence. His exigencies were to establish a not yet established field. Iman's exploration of digital rhetoric expanded in multiple directions and dimensions, positionalities, and potentialities. In one sense, the mapping was spatial. Its positionalities were located in relation to intersecting subjects, including digital literacy, visual rhetoric, new media, human-computer interaction, critical code studies, digital humanities, and internet studies, and the competing terms electric, computational, and techno rhetoric. In another avenue, the mapping was temporal. Iman traced the trajectory of traditional rhetoric from its origins in Western classical rhetoric to medieval and Renaissance, Enlightenment, and contemporary theories. In addition, he uncovered the origins of digital rhetoric as it evolved from George Landau's early notions of hypertext to James Zappin's call for an integrated theory, to more recent applications by Barbara Warnick, Ian Bogost, Elizabeth Losch, and others. In yet another dimension, the mapping was conceptual. Iman located the terms digital, text, and rhetoric in an intricate interplay. As he wrote, the digital provides a bridge between textual production, broadly defined to include multimedia, and rhetoric, which is then linked to text that encode human knowledge and memory. In other words, the digital connects and facilitates interactions between textual and rhetorical. Chapter 1, Implications. From a broader perspective, Iman illuminated a landscape simultaneously spatial, temporal, and conceptual. Such interconnected geographies ensured that conceptions of digital rhetoric were not elided or erased, but established and expressed through contrast with its completing conceptions, intersecting ideas, and historical precedents, and through its own terminologies, digital and rhetoric. The chapter deftly interwove between surfaces and depths, between microcosmic and macrocosmic vantage points. Iman noted that one complicating characteristic of digital rhetoric is its status as a metadiscipline at once analytic and productive, at once indicative of objects of study for analysis and products of digital rhetoric practices. Yet the definition of digital rhetoric Iman delineated seems, at least on the surface, deceptively simple considering its multifaceted pasts and presents. The term digital rhetoric is perhaps most simply defined as the application of rhetorical theory as analytic method or heuristic for production to digital texts and performances. Significantly, the simplicity of the statement belies the complexities of this field. The definition could be complicated by a consideration of the collisions and coalescences that led to the emergence of the field. As Iman detailed with richness and resonance, its boundaries are fluid and porous, and its definitions continue to evolve. Chapter 2: Digital Rhetoric Theory Overview. Chapter 2 recontextualized classical and contemporary rhetorics within digital environments. Digital analysis and production transforms the 5 canons of classical rhetoric: invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. Invention, which in its classical definition encompasses finding available means of persuasion, emerges as efforts to discover, seek out, and invent materials for arguments, as well as to interact with other texts, discourses, archives, and people, as invention becomes an intertextual, social endeavor. Arrangement transcends textual organization and structure into an architecture of connected hyperlinks in which users can remix existing texts. Style, synonymous with design, attains new significance as style and substance become integrated in the production of digital arguments. Memory transcends storage as archives invite interpretation, recovery, and preservation. Delivery, in turn, moves beyond its oral sense into systems and networks of distribution, publication, circulation, and performance. Iman then considered the emergence of digital rhetoric within contemporary rhetorical theory in relation to the rhetorical situation, digital identity, and network rhetorics. From these interlocutors, Iman introduced his own theory, one that conceptualized networks and digital rhetorics as economies and ecologies of circulation. Beginning with ecosystems, or specific bounded locales where circulation takes place, digital texts circulate within larger interconnected ecologies. Circulation occurs through textual appropriation and remix, for instance on YouTube, in which shared videos undergo continual cycles of creation and recreation. Ecologies are sustained by energy flows produced by activity and labor, and operate within economies of circulation, or production, distribution, and exchange across networks. Chapter 2: Implications. This chapter offered a significant contribution to digital rhetoric in relation to both classical and contemporary theorizations. Beyond a mere application of existing theories to digital texts, the recontextualizations illuminated the complexities of rhetoric that emerge in digital environments. What was once seen as static in form and function becomes dynamic, instantiated through interaction and interconnection among users and texts. The ecological theory in particular holds potential, as a natural metaphor illustrates the fluid, dynamic, cyclical nature of information flow. Interestingly, the language of ecosystems, ecologies, and energies evokes the organic essence of textual circulation as mediated by people and technologies, especially as the digital presence can be interpreted as inorganic, mechanical, and inhuman. The ecological metaphor further raises the questions: to what extent can existence and exposure lead to evolution, and to what extent are the texts in circulation trivial or transformative as the threads traverse the tapestries of interconnected networks? As the boundaries between the classical canons of rhetoric become fluid and porous, as invention collides with arrangement and the recreation of appropriated texts, the individual user's agency in transforming the digital praxis, at least on the level of individual experience, comes to the fore as a salient question. Significantly, arrangement becomes a nonlinear process, as navigation through hyperlinks invites multiple pathways and tagging interlocates related terms. Furthermore, as Iman wrote, users' ability to customize interfaces erodes the distance between the rhetor and reader, producer and user. Yet as texts are circulated and reappropriated, to what extent can we trace the origin of a text? To animate agency in our digitized states of alterity and aliveness is to blur the lines separating the author and the reader, the human and the machine, the original and the derivative, as texts travel and circulate through cycles of constancy and change. Chapter 3, Method. Overview. Chapter 3 mapped methodologies at once microcosmic and macrocosmic, close and distant, local and global. First, close and distant reading were contrasted as frameworks for analysis and interpretation, while close reading, when applied to digital contexts, focuses on a single text, taking literary criticism as an analogy. The emerging approach of distant reading identifies and compares patterns across a large set or corpus of texts, inviting data visualization in forms as trees or clouds. Research methods and writing studies such as genre likewise oscillate between micro and macro level perspectives in interrogating the evolution of textual production from individual to collaborative processes that unfold within networks. Additional methods such as usability and interactivity as users or students perform texts on the writing technologies. Furthermore, digital writing research by Bill Hart-Davidson, Heidi McKee, and Daniel DeVos, and other scholars examined visual representations of the writing process, investigating intention, response, and context. A number of methods were presented, including code and network administration tools, server log analysis, social network analysis, hypertext network analysis, citation analysis, and content analysis, including proximity analysis and cognitive mapping and data visualization. By representing information such as site traffic, social capital, and scholarly credibility, these tools expose the interconnections among users and texts, the multiple complex linkages coalescing into centralities or propagating into peripheries, illustrating accumulation and dispersal, revealing the significance or insignificance of a node or nexus. Like the nodes of the networks represented in the analyses, Hyman's mapping illuminated interrelated elements of digital rhetoric in a wider web. Chapter 3, Implications. This chapter offered a panoramic view that encompassed several intertwined strands of digital analysis. While the chapter carefully considered various methods, particularly network analysis and data visualization tools, perhaps it would be useful to provide examples of the methods as applied to analyze or produce specific digital texts. Juxtaposing local and global methods, the affordances of one become the limitations of the other. While local methods offer close interpretations that may not reveal larger patterns, global methods expose trends yet may elide individual idiosyncrasies. Network and data analysis methods could have a transformative effect on the humanities. For instance, the progression from close to distant reading could foretell a larger movement in humanistic studies, from micro-level to macro-level analyses, in addition to close literary or rhetorical interpretations of a single textual artifact such as a poem or speech. Our increasingly digital discourses could lead to rhetorical analyses that employ data analytics on a broader scale. To critique the existing methods, the emphasis on the visual as a mode of representation and analysis begs the question of whether alternative modalities or sensory capacities could generate methodologies for digital rhetoric. Network, ecology, and circulation theories could invite sonic, spatial, tactile, or kinesthetic expression as cyclical connections reverberate across multiple dimensions. In this sense, Hyman's foundational work opens up territories in which we might further expand our ways of knowing and perceiving rhetoric as enacted in digital spaces, broadening methodologies beyond the visual domain. Chapter 4, Practice, Overview. Chapter 4 presented numerous examples of pedagogical, scholarly, and public digital rhetoric texts. Hyman began by sharing course descriptions and syllabi that illustrate contrasting yet complementary approaches to teaching digital rhetoric in relation to analysis and production. Sarah Arroyo's seminar on digital rhetoric taught at California State University, Long Beach in 2009, which emphasized contemporary rhetorical theory and multimedia projects. Byron Hawk's advanced writing and digital rhetoric taught at the University of South Carolina in 2007, which invited blogging and social networking. And Iman's own web authoring and design taught at George Mason University in 2011, which focused on web design and production. Following the pedagogical practices, Iman included examples of scholarly web texts published in Kairos, Ellen Cushman's Composing New Media, Cultivating Landscapes of the Mind, which explored interactivity in digital spaces, Paul Pryor et al.'s Resituating and Remediating the Canons, a cultural historical remapping of rhetorical activity, which recontextualized the canons of rhetoric which within cultural historical perspectives, Susan Delagrange's Wunderkammer Cornell and the Visual Canon of Arrangement, which manifested the opportunities and challenges of visual arrangement, and Justin Hodgson et al.'s The Importance of Undergraduate Multimedia, an Argument in 7 Acts, which examined and enacted multiple forms of new media production. The chapter then considered productions of rhetoric that interrogated public dimensions, including Barbara Wernick's Play on Political Parody and Rhetoric Online, Elizabeth Lotch's exploration of government control and virtual politic, and even Bogos's examination of procedural rhetoric and persuasive games. Juxtaposed with the political and the public were several artistic remix projects on YouTube and other websites. The chapter concluded with links to scholarly communities of digital rhetoric, including the Sweetland Digital Rhetoric Collaborative, HJITRET, and Kairos. Chapter 4, Practice. Implications. In light of this chapter's emphasis on placing theory into practice, it is interesting to consider Iman's rhetorical design choices and the effects of those choices on the reader or viewer. The digital version of the book only includes alphabetic text, black typeface on a white background. As Iman explained in the introduction, I originally conceived of this project as a traditional print text, but through the good fortune of publication by the University of Michigan Press, it has evolved into a dual-natured work, available in both print and digital formats. While a born digital version of this project would be quite interesting and more interactive, the outcome would be radically different. Much of the review of the literature and explication of definitions, theories, and methods presented here simply works better in the traditional academic discursive form. Significantly, despite digital and multimodal affordances and capacities, traditional linguistic writing continues to offer greater ease of exposition, precision of expression, and development of argument than other modes. While I agree that the book's argument necessitates explications in prose, considering the critical connections between digital rhetorics and multimodal composition, I would have liked to see, or experience in alternate modes, more multimodal elements in the text, reflecting the interplay between content and format. Coda. Echoing Iman's coda, I close by way of an opening, an invitation or invocation for us as readers to enter the field of digital rhetoric. In a work foundational to forming the field and engendering its existence, Iman peered into its pasts, probed its presence, and foretold its futures. From kernel to kaleidoscope, the book created an expansive vision, one that exposes digital rhetoric's environments and ecologies, its cycles of circulation, constancy, and change. Its branches, the theoretical, methodological, and pedagogical, the spatial, temporal, and conceptual, grow upward and outward in multiple directions and dimensions as potential pathways for scholars and practitioners to pursue. Its metaphors and manifestations are multifaceted in their multimodalities: visual, aural, spatial, kinesthetic, synesthetic. Its intentions and instantiations become instantaneous yet infinite, as a single touch initiates ripples and reverberations through the web, carrying implications at once trivial and transformative. Even as Iman has charted a landscape of digital rhetoric, and even as digital texts attain new meanings and intentionalities in traveling through multiple authors and appropriators in cycles of originality and derivation, I invite the reader to step into this field, to wander and wonder in its spaces, to explore its unexplored territories, to encounter its untouched tapestries, to investigate its interstices, to consider its complexities, and possibly to pave new pathways for others to pursue.